We'll stay on this topic, of course, and joining us now to weigh in on the possibility of a value-added tax in the U.S. is Dan Mitchell, Senior Fellow with the Cato Institute, and Bill Turnier, Professor at the University of North Carolina School of Law. Gentlemen, great of you both to be here. Dan, to you first. The math on the surface looks really simple. 1% VAT, $1 trillion in revenue. But what would a VAT in this country put on top of an income tax do to our economy and really our way of life, potentially?
Well, VAT is just a way of spelling big government in Europe, because that's exactly what we've seen happen there. They put in the VATs. They promised to reduce or get rid of other taxes. They didn't. The same thing would happen in America. The end result, after all these years, is they have much, much bigger governments. They didn't reduce deficits. Deficits in places like Greece and Ireland and England are higher than what we have, and their national debts are higher than what we have. The only argument for a VAT as if you're a big government politicians and you want a brand new tax, so you have new loopholes to auction off to campaign contributors, and you have more money to spend buying votes with the tax money of the American people. It would be a disaster to get a value-added tax on top of the nightmare of the IRS we already have right now.
Professor Turnier, though, you listen on the Fox Business website this morning, actually argued in favor of a VAT, assuming there would be a cut in income and maybe corporate taxes. But what about what Jerry Willis talked about, protectionism? Is there a way to help American jobs if we impose the way that exports or imports and the way businesses are taxed? Could that help the U.S. job market and U.S. manufacturers?
Yes, it certainly could. Right now, we hit ourselves over the head. We impose, for example, a corporate tax that gets wrapped into the price of goods that gets exported. We impose Social Security tax. Again, it adds to the cost of labor. We export our goods with all of these tax burdens wrapped into them. What happens with our competitors, the Japanese, the Europeans, they have a value-added tax, but then it gets rebated on export. So all these high taxes that he's talking about that are used to fund their military, that are used to fund their social service system and the like, get rebated, all right? And so there we've got our products out there in America competing with the tax burden on them, and the Europeans have got scant tax burden on them when it comes to comparing the value-added tax to it. Now, sure, I'd love to see us not have to impose a value-added tax.
Right. Dan, I want to turn to you for a second because I've been reporting on this all day, and I was just told by folks at the National Taxpayers Union that the regime you have to have in place to put in a VAT tax is so expensive that it makes no sense to even implement a VAT tax unless you start at 10%. What do you make of that?
Well, there clearly are very high administrative costs, especially in the beginning. You're turning every business in America into a tax collector. Of course, they already are with payroll taxes and corporate income taxes as well. But this is a whole new regime. And then you have the massive complication of how you would integrate a value-added tax with all the different state sales taxes that we have. And then, of course, you have the fact that the economy is going to slow down because more money would be taken out of the productive sector and transferred to the politicians in Washington. I mean, so yeah, if you're going to do it, if you're going to do all that damage to the economy, what the Europeans have shown is that it's going to be a giant, big tax to make it worthwhile. But it's only worthwhile to them, not to us.
Bill, is it an inevitability in this country? Have we created so many entitlements in Washington, even in just the last year, that we've basically started spending the money now and then we'll tax later?
It seems to me that that is the case. We've got this population bubble that's coming along that's approaching Social Security. We've got Medicare problems. We've got Al-Qaeda to live with. We've got to probably increase our defense spending. You look at efforts to cut things, agricultural price supports. Bush tried to cut them. Obama tried to cut them for people making more than $1 million. And neither of them can get any headway with it. Republicans and Democrats in the Midwest, they agree on those price supports. Don't touch them. They're sacrosanct. We've got a real problem. Sure, we should cut a lot of stuff, all right? I agree with that, but it's not going to happen.
You know, and it was mentioned about the regressivity of this tax, Dan, and the idea that, you know, listen, poor people would be hurt more because they spend, so you're going to have to offer them some kind of credits. Otherwise, it's politically unpalatable. But if you've got credits, don't you open the door for a lot of fraud? I mean, if you're a low-income person, you come in to do your taxes, you say, oh, I spent $20,000 last year. I may not have all the receipts. You know, the IRS doesn't have the ability to go out and audit everybody, and people could end up with bigger credits than they're owed by just misclaiming what they have purported to buy.
Yeah, we already have massive fraud in the IRS with what's called the earned income credit, which is a government wage subsidy laundered through the tax system. If we do some new credit on top of that because of a value-added tax, it's just going to make that seem like almost chicken feed by comparison. So no matter how you look at the VAT, no matter how you slice it, bigger government, slower growth, more corruption, more fraud, more loopholes, more politicians getting fat on our money, when all we really need to do is just slow down the growth of government. If we limit government so it only grows at the rate of inflation, we will very quickly end all our budget problems. The only reason we're talking about a VAT is because Bush was a big spender, Obama's a big spender, and I'm tired of the American people having to send more of their money so that Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid can buy votes.
Dan Mitchell, final word. Dan Mitchell, senior fellow with the Cato Institute, and Bill Turnier, professor at the University of North Carolina School of Law. Gentlemen, thank you both very much.